Okay, so start, but this won't be long. So I'm laying here and I'm thinking about the one guy, I once upon a friend. And what he said one time, he was like, "Do you ever see yourself being with somebody in the shelter?" I was like, at the time, I'm like, what kind of question is that? Like, anybody in their right mind, and I'm saying right mind, like logical mind, would be like, no, that's not an option because, and this is what I said, I'm like, that's not an option because it is, I have to be focused. I have to get my life together. I can't be thinking about nobody when I'm in a shelter because it's like thinking about somebody when I'm down. Unless I got food in my teeth. Okay. And so the conditioned mindset basically is like, I can't be thinking about another person when I'm down because I'm trying to get up, and if I'm down thinking about another person, then I'm not gonna be thinking about getting up. And I was like, yeah, there's this girl that just got kicked out of the shelter, and she had her mind wrapped around this man. To this day, I see her with the guy, but he's with her in a shelter. I don't know their situation, but I know that she's still hanging around here, and that's not where I'm trying to be. Some people are lessons and are lessons um, in disguise, and that moment could have been showing me, if if I have my mind set on a man when I'm supposed to be doing something else, or my focus is supposed to be elsewhere, this is how it's gonna turn out. I'm gonna get kicked out of shelter because I'm not focused on what I'm supposed to be focused on, rather than being focused on what I'm supposed to be focused on God. And then I was just thinking, like, he was like, ain't nothing wrong with that though, because there's this woman in the shelter and there's this man in the shelter, and they planning to get their life together. They planning on getting a place together while they're in the shelter. And what I'm thinking is just like, I'm like, okay, so what you really saying is, since I kind of put it together, like maybe you saying this because obviously I don't know your situation too well, but I know that you don't have a place of your own, and then I'm a woman in the shelter. I'm like, okay, so what, I'm supposed to be sitting around looking like Rapunzel, waiting for her Prince Charming in a shelter. And it doesn't sound like a wrong thing. It doesn't sound bad at all. All the princesses. And this is what I was saying. I'm like, look, we could be a whole bunch of princesses in the shelters waiting for our Prince Charming to come save us, because that's what man is supposed to do anyway. Man is supposed to come and support and save and help. If he see a woman in the shelter that he like, he gonna come pick her up and be like, you can stay with me. You can live with me. I mean, I can support you and your kid. I'm gonna pick you up out the shelter. What if life was like that? That'd be so dope. And that's what I was thinking though, for real. Cause I was just like, well, what if we could like just stay in the shelter, and then, and that'd be what it is. We all under the shelter, just like the little villagers back in the day. They all had their little villages, and or they all lived in a home together, and then a man would come and pick his wife. Like that's kind of like the little fairy tale I wanted to live. I wanted to live um while I was in the shelter, live out. But you know how God be waking you up, like, hold up, no, this ain't the time. You can't do this. And that's what I was just thinking. I'm like, wow. But yeah, I was thinking of that because I seen from his perspective, and then I seen from my perspective. And I'm like, my perspective was the conditioned mindset, because that's what we're brought up to be raised. That's how we're raised or brought up, to be logical about every situation. And we have to be strategic, and we have to, do this, that, and the third. And we got to have our heads on straight because we have to get out of that situation. But the unconditioned mindset is more so of thinking about it in your own way. Just how that's how that's how life is, honestly. It's just you gotta make the best out of every situation. And when you're in a shelter, you gotta make the best out of living in the shelter. You gotta, you know, put together some type of ideas, some type of script, some type of movie script or something just to make it seem better than what it is. And then eventually it is better than what it is. And you start to just sit there and getting comfortable. You start to get comfortable because you formed your own little theory about where you're at. So then you start to role play. You start to follow the rules. You start to do everything that you're supposed to do. And you have no problem doing it because it's your own little fairy tale. Just to get by, it's your own little fairy tale. And you wind up falling asleep and you wind up being there too long. And it don't even matter if you're there too long because you you're living your own little fantasy there, you know? Like it's your own little home. And this is why people are in the shelter too long. We was just talking about this on one lady's posts, and she was like, um, she was talking about how her and her kids got to move, like they ain't going from hotel to hotel. I asked her, I was like, why you not in the shelter? And she said, I already tried to be in the shelter, and then somebody else commented, like they both said that there was too many people in the shelter, and um, I think she said like America or something like that has to get better with their shelters and um, for moms and um, get better with making more space for the shelters and stuff. And I'm just like, well, that's basically, it's along the line of it's not really. I mean, they could make more shelters, but at the same time, it's all about the people that's in the shelter as well. If they're willing to hurry up and get out, if they're getting too comfortable, and if they're too comfortable, that's the thing about the shelter. There's no deadline on how long you can be there. You can be there however long you want to. Just as long as you don't get kicked out. And when I went back into the shelter this time, I'm just like, I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to be there. I'm going to take my time and I'm going to do things slowly and gradually and look at all my resources, get all that I can out of the situation. But that's the thing about the girl that I was watching as well. Like, we kind of relate in that situation when this guy interfering with our plans. Just like she said, when guy interferes with her, it's like a whole freaking she gets aggravated right when it's time to go, and that's how it was. I was getting aggravated right at the time it was go, but I didn't want to go and I didn't need to go. Well, I did want to go, but it wasn't in my plan to go so soon. So that was my plan, was to do everything the right way this time, because I noticed before when I was in the shelter about, like, I want to say 8 years ago, I was in the shelter with my daughter and my son, and and first time with my daughter and my son, then the second time with just my son when I moved out of the city. But I did things fast because it's like I'm always going to be that person in that conditioned mindset. I have to do it. I have to do this. I have to do that. So I was, but I knew that I did things too fast. So that's why I was like, at this time, because every experience in the shelter is a different experience depending on you and everything that you've got out of the situation, everything that you learn. So it's just like you go into another shelter, but you're more aware of what you're getting out of it this time and what you're going into. So that's what I was thinking about. So when I went to shelter this time, that was the plan. I'm like, I'm aware, I know, so this time it's gonna be different. It wanted to be in the same thing. Like it's like I was put into the position, I was pressured into going back into that conditioned mindset and getting out of there as soon as I could. But this time wasn't like the last. Well, yeah, it was like the last time because yeah. So it's like I was pressured into going back into that conditioned mindset. And what I had to do to get out of this situation. But yeah, life has its way. So anyway, while we on the topic, I did just watch this movie. And this movie was about a guy. It was a weird movie because it was about this guy. It was about this woman and her brother. Her brother was suffering. Um, and she explained her story to the guy. She said her brother was suffering and her dad wanted to help him best that he can and help other people understand a situation or understand that they was different. But they couldn't. But he couldn't. And then um eventually they started noticing that there was other people that wasn't that was different. Well, that was the same as them. Um but so they formed this whole little thing around the world. Oh, it's very a complex movie. I'm gonna have to tell y'all next time. But it was so different. It was so weird. Um, but it's just complicated to talk about because it's very complicated movie. It's not something that you would just get right away. Um, but overall, it was these two couples that loved each other, and there was this guy that just kept getting in the way of them. It's like he wanted what the guy had, and he came and took what he had, which was his wife. Um, in a kind of matrix type of way. That's kind of what the show was. It was kind of like a matrix. So he came and he took his wife, and then at the end, when they finally discovered, like the wife's memory started coming back, and she found out what went on. She figured out what happened because he reminded her. Um, the guy came up to him. He was like, "You just gotta have everything your way. You gotta have everything. Um, you can't sacrifice nothing. You gotta have everything." And he was, I guess he was jealous, like, because when she was coming out, one time she came out because he forgot his key. The guy was standing there across the street just watching him. And then as he kept walking, the guy kept getting closer. And then eventually he went home and the guy was right there as he was calling for his wife. But he had a perfect life. Everything was perfect, and that's what the guy envied about him. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, there's always that one person in our life that's always going to attack us for what we have, whether you know it or you don't. It's like that scar in that Mufasa. Everybody has a scar in their life, and that scar is going to keep coming after you, feeling like you have to sacrifice everything because they don't have what you have and they're jealous of what you have. So they want to take over, and they really want your life for what it is. You know. In the end, was sad because he actually didn't get his way. He he sacrificed his wife, and he let that guy have his woman, and she lived her life with him, and he wound up being an outcast. Um, so yeah, but it wasn't his decision though. The guy was supposed to make everything back the way it was supposed to be, and he wound up making that guy into the outcast and giving the other guy his wife. And I was just like, wow, it's sad because we never get our way. Even Mufasa didn't get his way. He didn't get his way, but his child carried on his his life for him. But yeah, it's just, I feel like that's so unfair. But at the end of the day, you know, we we only live once, YOLO. You only live once, and every experience is an experience, but it doesn't have to be your last experience. So yeah. With that being said, y'all, it is late. I don't know if I'm about to go to sleep or not. Um, but I'm gonna talk to y'all next time, and yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I will talk to y'all next time. Like, comment, subscribe, be notified, share, tone, free web shade.